Are you all still awake out there? I don't even want to know at what time some of you went to bed or if you even went to bed at all last night, but we are so glad that you all are with us. I know it's day 3, and normally by day 3 we're dragging our feet just a little bit, but it's because it has been such an energetic event. I mean, having the Vice President with us, having key White House officials, and of course, President Donald Trump address CPAC. Now, was that spectacular or what? But I have the great honor to be here with the rising stars, just some of the rising stars in the conservative movement. Let me tell you, these 3 individuals who are up here, get to know them. They are such a critical part of our conservative movement. They are doing things at the state level. They are fighting for conservative principles, and they are here to talk about their experience in the conservative movement, in leadership positions, in getting the conservative message out. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce them and we'll move into the discussion. So next to me I have State Senator Affie Ellis from Wyoming. She's a mother of 3 elementary and preschool aged children. She was elected to the Wyoming Senate in 2016. So let's give a warm round of applause for State Senator Ellis. Then we have Attorney General Patrick Morrisey. He was elected as Attorney General for the state of West Virginia in 2012. He has been one of the most active attorney generals in the country, fighting federal overreach by filing lawsuits and submitting amicus briefs before the U.S. Supreme Court on a number of issues, including protecting the Second Amendment and defending state jobs and our valuable energy resources. Let's welcome Attorney General Morrisey. And last but not least, we have a fellow Floridian, Mary Thomas. She was a 2016 Republican conservative candidate who sought election to the U.S. House of Representatives to represent the 2nd Congressional District of Florida. And she is also a member of the NRCC's Young Guns program in 2016 and also a lawyer. And we are so glad to have Mary Thomas with us today. So to start, I'm going to ask each of you, what made you a conservative? We'll start with you, Affie.
Sure. Just to give a little background about who I am, my parents are both Navajo, and they grew up on the reservation. Back in the 1950s, they attended a boarding school in Utah where they were taught trade skills, and afterward, my dad had learned how to weld, and he got a job in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and so he and my mom started their family there. But in that role, obviously, the welding industry depends a lot on a robust tourist economy, and for me, when I started really paying attention to politics was when we had a ban on snowmobiles in Yellowstone National Park. There was a lot of concern about what that would do to the tourist industries, snowmobile guides, and it really highlighted to me how devastating federal overreach can be if left unchecked. And so that really started opening my eyes of bad things that can happen.
And you shared it that when you were on your campaign, what made you decide to run?
Well, a big part of my reason for running, I looked at the state legislature in Wyoming. We have one of the worst percentages of women serving in the legislature in the country. Looking at the state Senate in particular, we had the risk of having no women serving at all. And so I felt that it was important as a mom to make sure that that voice was represented, particularly given our state's education challenges with a boom-bust economy and declining revenues which pay for our education system.
Wonderful. Do you want to show your experience? What made you a conservative?
Sure. Well, I think I started at a very early age following politics, and I had a very keen interest in it. And when I used to watch the growth of government, I would think that that would actually constrain moral choices by individuals. And so that started to motivate me at a very early age. And then, before I ran for office in West Virginia, I saw what the federal government was doing to our way of life in the state. When you look at Obamacare, when you look at the war on coal, all these regulations would put so many people out of work and constrain freedom. And so I was really motivated to get engaged because I thought that big government meant less freedom and actually was not respecting the inherent rights of individuals. And that's what I've tried to fight for over the last 4 years.
Mary.
Well, I would say that it's really my parents. I'm a first-generation American, and they came to America from India in 1972. And when they came, they just really had their educations, but they came because they knew in this country, unlike any other country in this world, if they worked hard, they would be able to be successful. And that's what they did. They started a successful family business, which they built from the ground up, and a successful biotechnology company. But they taught us about fiscal responsibility, about the importance of family, about loving our country and being so grateful to be here and be citizens of this great country. So that's really, they are my foundation.
I think there's so many out there who they kind of think about this idea about running for office or taking their conservative passion and to the next level. And so you all have gone through these experiences of running in campaigns. What do you think it takes to win?
Well, I'm happy to start. I ran against a long-serving Democrat in Wyoming, and Wyoming is one of the reddest legislatures in the country. And so at the time, there were only 4 Democrats serving in our legislature, and so I ran against one of them and defeated him. But really, it was a hard work ethic, doing an aggressive door-to-door campaign, and then just communicating with voters about things I wanted to work on, and just a lot of hard work.
And what message worked for you?
Well, again, back to the education thing, Wyoming, we are very dependent on our mineral extractive resource industry. And over the years, we've seen a lot of challenges in federal regulation that have hindered our ability to develop those resources and provide energy for America. That has had a trickle-down effect on our education system, which is largely funded by those resources. So we're in a very difficult area of needing to make some tough challenges. Wyoming, we have one of the richest education models in the country. We spend $16,000 per student. Compared to other Rocky Mountain states in our area, the average is around $10,000. So I think our first step is being mindful that we need to be respectful of how we spend those public dollars before we start imposing new taxes on our businesses, on our industries, and our families. I think that's an important first step.
Attorney General, share with us one story, one campaign story when you were on the trail.
Well, I can tell you there are a few. One of the things that happened in the last race, after we spent the last 4 years really filing lawsuit after lawsuit against President Obama, I wasn't perceived very well by the past White House. And so.
Wait, and you said you didn't get any of your calls returned either, right?
Well, that's right. In fact, one of the things I could say, it's going to be a lot better to work with this administration than the last, because going back to the issues of coal in terms of what this administration tried to do, it's so important for people to know that when you have a president or a candidate for office like Hillary Clinton, who's indicating she wants to put coal miners out of work, that gets people motivated to their bones, and they are really excited to go out and be active. And I think building upon the last comment that was made, one of the things you have to do is just articulate what are the reasons why you're running and why your values relate to the people, the citizens of your state. We tried to do that every day, because the one thing they knew is that unlike other politicians who would simply say, well, I'm not for Obama or I'm not for Hillary, I tried to say we were going to do something substantive, file a lawsuit and win, and help change our way of life for the better in the state. And that's why I think it's important for conservatives to be those who act, not just talk and not spew out rhetoric.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's this idea of action, right? It's being a
Absolutely.
doer. That sounds very similar to President Trump. I don't know. Does that...
Well, look, I think President Trump had the second largest vote tally in the country. I think Wyoming may have been first. But when you get 68.6%, the reason why he did is because he spoke to their hearts and minds, and these are people that have just been crushed by the power of the federal government. I think President Trump offered a much more compelling vision, and that's why people really reacted very well to him.
Mary, you went through this grueling campaign, you ran for Congress. Tell us your experience.
Well, I think it was great. I got to meet so many great people, and the district I ran in, the 2nd District of Florida, is a very rural and agricultural district. It's really part of the heartblood of our country, small business owners, farmers, cattle ranchers. And one of the things that I think was so important in my campaign is that we traveled every single day, over 2,000 miles plus on our car every single week, to meet with people and go out to their dairies. I rode horses, I herded cows. I learned about their businesses and their families and what was really impacting them. And it was the same thing that the country was feeling as a whole, and why President Trump got elected, because people were tired of Washington not representing the people of our country.
Right.
Washington was representing the special interest groups and the lobbyists, and not just the regular, everyday people like me and all of the people in our district.
Now, you did not win that election. You lost by...
Narrowly lost by just 1%, about 1,000 votes.
And this is a case, it is a case study of what we would call the establishment Republican versus the conservative running. How do you think that dynamic played out during this election cycle, especially in your particular race?
Yeah, I think, every single conservative group that was out there supported me, including the American Conservative Union with your husband and Dan Schneider, and everyone was so helpful. The Freedom Caucus, Maggie's List, all of these groups. But in the end, what happened, I believe, is there was a little bit more money that the other side had, and they attacked us, even though we were clearly the conservative candidate out there. But, I think one thing that is important is if you take this chance and you run for office, you should never give up. You always have to be persistent, and that is one thing that we did on our campaign. I actually, after my race, I converted my campaign office into a Trump for President office, and my husband and I, So we ran his most productive North Florida field office, and we had people from all walks of life, Democrats, Republicans, independents, who would come in. There was a man who even rescheduled his eye surgery so that he could make calls.
Yeah.
And that's what people felt in the passion. So we can never give up. There's always a fight out there that we can fight, even if we don't lose, even if we don't win our particular race.
Right.
We can always participate in the movement.
And I think part of it is obviously building out the name recognition as well. Sometimes you don't win the first time, you win the second or third time. And I think, you look at President Trump, where he didn't spend very much money. Obviously, he was outspent by Hillary Clinton, yet he had such a strong message and such a strong movement that I think it absolutely made the difference. So here we have the media, fake news in some cases, and the left constantly, you guys all clap whenever they say fake news. Fake news. There you go. We're getting attacked. Conservatives has been attacked, since for generations. How do conservatives survive this? Let's start with, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, first thing, you have to have a thick skin. In Charleston, West Virginia, we have a major fake news outlet, and I'm not afraid to say it. And you have to be willing to actually stand firm with your principles and continue to do the right thing, even though you'll have the newspapers and your opponent lie about everything that you do. We probably had over 150 above-the-fold hit pieces in the first 4 years. Why? Because I was a conservative and I would not back down.
Amen.
And that's, I think the key thing is to have a thick skin, but also build alliances. As the Attorney General of West Virginia, I thought that our voice would be magnified if we worked with 15, 20, 25 states on a lot of this litigation. Because that way, when they're looking at our litigation, it's not just you as an individual Attorney General, it's potentially half the country. It's a lot harder to attack when you come as a team. And that's what we tried to do.
That's absolutely right. Afi?
Facts, hard work. There are so many times where I think it's easy to name call and have these cute hashtags that stick, but we have to have strong facts and start communicating those facts in a very effective way. And I think the hard part is a lot of the devil in the details of any policy that you're working on don't fit well into small hashtags. So maybe we just need long hashtags.
I don't know if they can fit with the character limit in Twitter, but yes, they. Were you attacked by the media during your campaign cycle?
Not really.
Those people in Wyoming are so nice.
We are
they really are.
Very nice. I would say no, not by the media, but certainly as we're facing some difficult economic challenges in Wyoming, we're making very difficult budget choices because we, like most families in this country, live by a budget. And when you don't have revenue, you have to make smart and tough choices about where you're going to cut. And so being a member of the legislature, we're starting to receive a lot of those criticisms, but we have to hold fast in our message that, there's a choice. If you want to raise taxes, then we can do that. Or if you want us to live within our means, that's what we'd like to do. And that's the mandate, I think, that we've been given.
Mary.
I was, of course, attacked by the liberal media, but as Mr. Morrissey and Affy have said, you just have to stand up for your ideals. One of the things that they said, I think we were doing a newspaper panel, they said that I was supported by special interest groups, and ACU helped me, Club for Growth, Senate Conservatives Fund. So what I told them, I just gave it back to them. I said, well, the groups that support me, if you call the Constitution a special interest group, then I guess that's a special interest group that supports me.
Yes,
So.
yes. That's fantastic. I have to say, I'm a Fox contributor, so we get tough questions, but we don't. It's always it's such a respectable debate. My sweet husband, who's been on all these other networks, and I used to do the other networks as well beforehand. It's rough. It's rough, and it is about the tough skin. But I always tell him, during the election cycle, he would say, "I goes, did you watch my hit?" And I'd be like, "No," because I was so petrified of the fact that they were going to call him all these awful names on air, and I just couldn't watch it. I was like, it's just too painful to watch. But I think he kept going on. And so you can't ignore it. It's good to go on these channels and, write, if you have a strong opinion of something, get it out to your local papers. That's what social media is about. Get it on Facebook, express your opinions. Don't stay quiet. You have to speak up because this is the only way you can educate other, families and your community. And I know Tom, one of our friends, Tom, who lives out in Culpeper, he's a retired physician. I mean, he writes all the time out there, and it's about impacting your local politics in a lot of ways. So I really encourage all of you to use, since I'm from the media world, to use your avenues, because now with social media, it really allows you to get out the conservative message. I want to move on to now we're in charge. Conservatives are in charge in so many states. Obviously at the national level with President Trump being the leader. So now we got to govern. And I think governing is probably the hardest part. So how do you as conservative leaders in your state stay connected with the grassroots? Affy.
Well, this is my first term serving in the Wyoming legislature, and certainly, once this session ends, we do a 40-day session. It'll be communicating with voters in my district to be very transparent about bills that they've contacted me with and providing a really thoughtful explanation. Again, I think that our country needs so desperately some thought and some well-researched responses and not just canned statements. And so I've made a commitment to make sure that when I communicate with my voters, they'll have all the facts and it'll be very transparent and there'll be no game playing. They'll know how I voted.
I love the idea you bring up facts. And this is to all of you. Fact check. Figure out what your source is of information when you write or say anything. You always have to back it up with where you got this information. I think it's really critical because nowadays people just retweet, send it over because your cousin Mary sent it to you, so you just no. You got to read it and make sure that it's not fake because you don't want to be accused on the other side either. Attorney General.
Well, a couple different things. First, I think it is important to keep engaging the people.
Yes.
And one of the things I did after I took office in 2013, I had a series of town halls. We ultimately did about 75 town halls across the state of West Virginia, another 60 different public meetings. So when the news media would start to lie about a particular issue, people who would go to the meetings would know the opposite because they could hear firsthand what was going on. Between that tool, getting out on social media, and getting to a lot of the friendly news outlets. Every news outlet is not fake news. There are some, and it's important to actually work with the ones who are going to be fair to you.
Right. Mary.
I think you just have to continue to stay in touch, and that's what I've done with all my supporters. Even during the campaign, everyone had my cell phone number, so it had direct access to me, and I think that's what we want from our legislators. People you might not always be able to get back to them very quickly, but even though I didn't win the race, there are people still calling me to ask for advice. I was one of Governor Rick Scott's attorneys, and they asked for advice with state issues as well. So I think we just have to actually care about people and their families and their lives and It makes a big difference.
Just to close up, oh, go
No,
ahead.
I was just going to add, I think it's funny, I always get people saying, can someone from your staff? And I'm like, I don't have staff, it's me. You've got my cell, you've got my email, I check them both, so.
So just to wrap up, we're going to go do a round robin here. What advice do you give these conservatives out there, just that you think is important for them if they are looking to become the next rising star in the conservative movement?
I think the best advice I continually get is clear, calm heads will always prevail, and so to keep your head about you.
I would say that the most important thing is to work very hard, but know that one person can make a difference. In West Virginia, we started something really powerful. I was the only Republican in West Virginia state government for the first couple years in my term of office. If you start to build and you stick to your principles, you work hard, you build a team, there's no telling how much you can accomplish. Little old West Virginia slaughtered President Obama's Clean Power Plan with the help of 27 states, 150 groups, Dems, Republicans, consumer groups, labor unions. It did that because we had an idea and we saw it through.
Mary?
Just as Mr. General Morrissey said, I think we need to stick to our conservative ideals, but we need to become active because just like you said, every single person makes a difference. So when on election night, when we were feverishly watching for the results to come in, we saw that President Trump was tied with Hillary in Florida. Until the panhandle came in, until the last second, we had volunteers making phone calls, knocking doors, and every little bit made a difference. And our volunteers made a big difference in electing President Trump.
Thank you. Well, our founding fathers just came in through the door. Thank you guys. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Thank you so much for writing the Constitution, for fighting for our rights, for ensuring that our conservative principles live on. God bless our founding fathers. Our patriots, the patriots. We want to thank you all. You are the rising stars. You are so much the core of the conservative movement. We admire the work that you're doing at the state level. And we want to thank you all for being here. You all are all stars as well. And we're just going to wrap up. Thank you so much.